These grim unemployment numbers for Black Americans highlight inequalities that we have been talking about addressing for years. But clearly efforts aren't working or not enough. So how are we going to solve for that? I have the perfect guest to discuss it. Right now we are joined by our very special guest, Mellody Hobson. She's the co-CEO and president of Ariel Investments. She sits on the executive boards of JP Chase, Starbucks, and Quibi, and she's a nationally recognized voice on financial literacy. Mellody, thank you so much for joining us. Policymaking, the government clearly not improving things. So can business leadership today address these disparities?
It's not a question of can they have to. Business is finding itself in a situation where it has to step up and plug the holes that exist where government just can no longer do the job. We've seen that time and time again. This is just another example of it. And the good news is, I think a lot of corporate leaders really understand this newfound responsibility cannot be avoided, and they're taking up the mantle for social change. Their employees are demanding it. Their customers are asking a lot of questions and holding them accountable. And they recognize if they want to be world-class 21st century organizations, they have to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
But this didn't come out of thin air. This has been a problem since the dawn of time. Wes Moore said that corporate America hasn't just failed to help the Black community. He says it is complicit in generating the disparities that we're seeing today. Would you agree with that?
This is what I would say. It's called systematic racism for a reason. It just didn't start last year or the year before. There's 400 years of history here where this foundation has been built up. It exists everywhere in this country. And there is no one that can say they haven't seen it or don't understand it because it's been in front of us. We saw it in a big way during the civil rights period, and we're now seeing it because of something very simple, that is recording the actions of injustice, but this is not new. We've seen it for a long time. So corporate America now has to understand its role and be a part of the solution and understand where systematic racism exists in their own organization.
You actually have a formula when you talk about what corporations should be doing. Can you walk us through it?
We talk about the 3 Ps. So we are members of Fortune 500 boards who are Black and some Latinx board members as well. We come together every year at a conference called the Black Corporate Directors Conference that my company sponsors with Russell Reynolds and Deloitte, the big accounting firm, and Russell Reynolds, the search firm. And we tell Black directors and Latinx directors that they should be a part of what we call a call to action to make sure that the civil rights agenda is not left out of the boardroom, and specifically to address what we call the 3 Ps: people, purchasing, and philanthropy. Now, we're hearing a lot about philanthropy these days. We think that's the tail that wags the dog. It's important, but the change has to happen not without, within. You have to fix your own house first before you think about how charity can affect our country. We want the charity to be there, but we want corporations to recognize what they can do at home. People count. As I like to say, math has no opinion. Where is the leadership? And then go through the entire organization by ethnicity and look at the numbers. It will be extraordinarily revealing, and you will see where the holes exist and where the inequality exists in your organization. Next, purchasing. We like the concept of business diversity. Who, as an organization, are you doing business with? And making sure that everyone gets included and count across all categories: legal, accounting, all areas where you spend money. Are you being inclusive in giving opportunities to diverse businesses, African American, Latinx, minority businesses?
But of those Fortune 500 companies, here's the thing. Only 5 of them are led by a Black CEO. 0 have a Black female CEO. What gives you confidence that this call to action will actually be met with something real?
So I want incentives tied to these outcomes, like we have incentives on everything else in corporate America. And I want targets, not quotas, targets, because we are used to targets. We have earnings targets, we have profitability targets. Targets are in the DNA of corporate America. as our incentives. You get what you incent. So I want leaders at the top held accountable for the diversity of their organization. They can't just talk about it. They actually have to see their pay affected by that outcome, like it is affected by all other outcomes that matter. And I also want to see them hold their individuals, people accountable, the leadership on down, accountable for diversity. You can't be a superstar at an organization and get your full bonus if your team is not diverse, is what I am saying. And then I'd like to see that same accountability happen as it relates to purchasing. So between incentives and setting targets, what are our targets for an inclusive organization, which hopefully look somewhat similar to the demographics of the United States? That's a start. That, I think, will lead to a better outcome. But we can't just wishful think our way into a better outcome or be emotional and have our hearts in the right place. This is about math and counting.
Does it need to come before corporate America even has a role to play? Does it need to go back to education, specifically financial literacy? When you look at how Black women have been disproportionately hurt out of jobs during this pandemic, it's because they have the lowest wage service worker roles, and they don't have white collar jobs that can easily be done from home. Should we start to look at the way we're educating all of America and positioning people?
So here's my problem with that statement. That is a long-term fix. I think that there are short-term solutions that can move the needle on these inequality issues, which have to do with economic inequality. I 100% agree with you. But if we start with dealing with economic inequality inside of corporate America today, that needle can get moved. We've talked a lot about gender pay equity differences, and a lot of companies have done gender pay studies. I think you should do racial pay studies as well inside of organizations, so those differences also get realized. But to me, the education problem, that's when you get into the big, hard problems that America absolutely needs to fix. I'm not saying it's not important, but I would like not to distract us from, again, the opportunity that corporate America has to fix its own house.
Amen to that. Mellody, thank you so much for joining us. Your words, your work, your effort, it couldn't be more important, especially at a time like this.
Thanks.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.